Cutting and processing logs might sound boring, but it can get pretty crazy when the trees come down. Today, we're looking at the most interesting facts about the wood processing industry. Let's get started. The world of wood processing. Let's start with the obvious question. What is this? Wood processing is a complicated way of basically saying that a tree gets chopped down and hacked into little pieces used for many other purposes. This uses a combination of machinery and human labor, sometimes at home and sometimes at a professional factory or sawmill. At home, folks tend to use easygoing chainsaws to fell trees. Axes and chainsaws are then used to cut up the trees into logs for construction or firewood. Some people even use wood-cutting machines to bring home their own Christmas trees. However, these are less impressive than the machines used in the wood processing industry. In a felling workyard, a chainsaw will not cut it. Giant machines are used to disintegrate oaks, elms, and pines for factory-grade production. The whole process of pulverizing a tree takes around 3 steps: felling, cutting, and processing. You're probably picturing a lumberjack yelling timber and cutting down a tree, but the problem is most trees are too big for a lumberjack's axe. That's where the wood processing machines come into play. Most lumberjacks now use a machine to cut down a tree, breaking it down into little logs that can be used to make things like wood chips. With the advances in this technology, you can even use these machines to plow down 150-foot trees. The tree-cutting crane machine has definitely made a logger's life easier. In a Jukin video, the crane is seen tearing through a tree farm. The machine has a saw on its crane, maneuvered like a giant arm by the driver. In the video, the transformer-like object blasts through the base of a tree, picks it up, and skins it, tossing it to the side. This monstrous contraption is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to wood processing machines. It only takes care of the felling aspect. Woodworking machines take care of the rest. Most woodworking machines are the stars of sawmills and wood processing units in factories. They can take giant elms and spindly pine trees and convert them into furniture. It takes a lot of time and effort to do so. First, the woodworking machine must distribute each tree according to diameter, shave off its upper layers and roots, and sort it through advanced sensors to meet the desired requirements of the production process. Each tree trunk is converted into logs and sawed, pressed, and polished into shapes. If a chair is needed, these shapes will be rectangular, and if a round table is needed, these will be elliptical. The logs can be further processed into different groups to convert them into necessary material. The trees are cut and coaxed into blocks, sheets, and planks and carted off into different holding units. Machines like the OptiJoint V8 can be extremely fast and precise. It takes tree logs and puts them through a sophisticated process of scaling, trimming, sawing, and segmenting. The logs are marked and tracked throughout the assembly line to ensure product quality. The machine whirs methodically as it systematically disintegrates multiple units of lumber and converts it into individual planks for construction. The scales of the machine leave lines as imprints on the surfaces of the planks, making them a uniform sight on the assembly line, even as they leave in different sizes. The planks zoom down the assembly line afterwards and are edged into precise structures with mechanisms digging grooves into their edges to create individual components of window frames. This is where the human labor comes in. The window frames are ornate and of specific shapes, so are assembled by hand and fit together perfectly. The person who does this is called a sawyer. A sawyer's day at the mill. Sawmills are a lot of work, and their workmen take no prisoners. From the moment a tree enters a sawmill, it's disintegrated fully into useful components. While sawyers do not axe trees like jacks do, they definitely get crazy with the processing bit. Each bit of the tree must be used. When a tree is sawed, scaled, and separated, it goes to the sawyer in charge. The sawyer then turns the tree into what is called a cant, the square-shaped planks, and examined before it is carted off to the other machines, like the circle saw. So what does the sawyer examine? They check to see if the bits of logs have knots, and if they are the perfect size or quality. They also need to keep up with the diameter measurements of every tree type, otherwise it can't be approved. The sawyer's job then is to create live sawn, plain sawn, and quarter sawn bits, basically planks or boards of different sizes. A sawyer is an important presence on the site. They make sure that every cant is going to the right department and are of passable quality. They even know handy things like the right diameter for white oaks, 16 inches. And that's not all that sawyers do. Sawyers need to make sure there's absolutely no waste in the sawing and woodworking process. A sawmill will obviously create a lot of sawdust, that is dust and debris from cutting huge tree trunks and scaling logs. This sawdust never actually goes to the bin though. It goes into another machine. Woodworking leads to waste materials like the tree's bark. the logs, sawdust, and scraps of roots and trees. Sawdust is gathered and sorted off the floor of the assembly line and sawmill. It's then carted off to kiln factories where it's used as a source of energy for dry kilns. Dry kilns are used in the production process of hardwood floors, and they require a lot of energy to run. It's a good thing then that sawmills have a lot of sawdust handy. Scraps of the tree are also collected and processed through a machine called a chipper. The chipper makes the scraps small enough to be used in paper factories. The paper in your notebooks might very well be the result of scraps. Bark is also shipped off to a secondary industry, namely construction. It's shaped and pressed into accurate dimensions and sold off to landscapers and construction workers. Anytime you see a door or a table, you might be able to see that they look like the surface of a tree bark. Clearly, every step of the process demonstrates that a sawmill takes no prisoners. All of this process is a manufacturing method in the lumber drying industry. Here, factories use trees to make consumer products like floors, closets, and tables. Sawmills take the first stab at processing and cutting the felled logs, but most consumer products are finalized in a factory. In fact, the lumber factory itself deserves some attention, especially in terms of what happens on the factory floor. A lumber factory floor. Lumber drying factories work through a multi-step process with different machines. Some familiar sights at the lumber drying factory include cutting, perfecting, and drying the trees. After a head rig is used to saw the mighty tree into little pieces, the edging and trimming machines perfect them and cart the pieces onwards. This is where the rough lumber sorting machine takes over on the factory floor and uses high-grade technology to tell whether the particular piece of lumber is market grade and the perfect size. After the rough lumber sorting is done, these are processed further as unseasoned or green lumber. Then comes the stickering process. And no, these are not sparkly stickers. Stickering is a high-tech process where spacers or stickers take the lumber and circulate air within the stacks of wood. The stickers are only used to do this in lumber for dry production. The dryness of wood is very important. Wood is obviously sourced from tree farms or forests where there might be rain. Rain creates moisture content in the timber because trees store water to survive. While rain might be good for trees, a lot of moisture can be bad for logs and the products they become. This is why the moisture content of the logs must be evaporated as much as possible before the logs become actual goods. Remember the kiln drying? The kiln dries up moisture content in the wood and makes it suitable for further production. When the kiln finishes up the evaporation, planing is done to smooth and properly size each plank or lumber unit. Then it's time for the last step, grading. Grading is a factory's way of making sure that the end product is up to production and consumer standards. If the product does not have a good grading, it might go unapproved and be discarded entirely. At the end, the packed and shiny wooden products are loaded onto trucks and carted off to other plants or stores. The life cycle of a tree then ends on a shelf or in a house. That's all we've got for today. These are the top things you need to know about the wood processing industry. Which one did you like the most? Let us know your favorite in the comments below. Also, like our video and subscribe to our channel for more content just like this. Make sure to turn on the bell icon to get notifications. See you guys next time.